The sound of the horn tore through the quiet dawn. Men ran through the streets of Axum, their bare feet hitting the red dust, shouting one word that froze hearts. "The prince is dead." The sun had barely risen, but the whole city already trembled. Traders dropped their baskets of frankincense. Farmers left their oxen in the field. From the palace walls, smoke curled in the air, the kind that meant mourning. At the base of the tallest stone obelisk, the body of Prince Caleb, heir to the throne of Axum, lay still, a thin dagger through his chest. His white robe was stained dark. A single gold coin rested on his tongue, as if someone had mocked the gods. Beside him, someone had carved a strange mark on the stone, a cross, though Axum had not yet embraced that symbol. Only one man had seen what happened. His name was Mekuriya, a slave who cleaned the temple floors. He was small and quiet, often unseen like the wind. That morning he had risen before dawn to fetch water for the priests. When he passed the obelisk, he saw two shadows, one tall, cloaked in royal silk, the other shorter, moving quickly. He heard a sharp cry and then silence. Now he stood in the palace courtyard, trembling before the council of nobles. "Speak," said Lord Tesfaye, commander of the royal guards. "What did you see?" Mekuriya's lips shook. "Two men, my lord, one was the prince, the other I could not see his face." "Did you recognize the voice?" Tesfaye asked. The boy hesitated. It sounded like someone from the royal court. Gasps echoed. Eyes turned toward General Dawit, the king's closest advisor, a man whose loyalty was both admired and feared. Dawit only smiled faintly. A slave's ears hear what they wish to hear. But the king, Ezana the Elder, did not smile. He rose slowly from his throne, a tall man with grey in his beard and sorrow in his eyes. "Find who did this," he said, voice hard as iron, "and bring them to me before the next moon rises." That night Mekuriya could not sleep. The prince's face haunted him. As he swept the temple courtyard, his broom brushed against something metallic, a small gold coin marked with the seal of Arabia Felix, the rich land across the Red Sea. He frowned. Only traders and royal envoys carried such coins. What was it doing here, near the obelisk where the prince had died? He hid the coin in his sash. Something in his heart told him this coin was more dangerous than any sword. The next day, ships arrived at the port of Adulis, bringing goods from Arabia and India, silk, spices, and rumors. Among the traders was Layla, a sharp-eyed woman from the Yemeni coast. She dealt in incense and gold, but her true trade was information. She carried a letter sealed with the mark of the South Arabian king, addressed to General Dawit. At the palace gate she bowed low, "A message for the general from our brothers across the sea." Dawit met her privately in the courtyard, away from the guards. He broke the seal, his eyes scanning the short message. "The boy is dead, the path is open. The gold will flow as promised." Dawit's jaw tightened. He burned the letter in a nearby brazier, the flames dancing in his eyes. "Tell your king," he said quietly, "that Axum keeps its word. Arabia will have its trade and I will have my crown." Layla's lips curved slightly. "And the old king?" Dawit looked toward the palace where King Ezana prayed before the temple. "He will not live to see another season." Meanwhile, Mekuriya wandered the crowded market, trying to find someone who could tell him about the strange coin. An old coin seller examined it under the sun. "Arabian," he said, "very pure gold, worth more than a man's freedom." "Who brings such coins?" Mekuriya asked. "Only those who trade directly with the south, merchants of the sea, or the royal men who control the ports." "Like General Dawit." The old man's eyes darted around nervously. "SHH, don't say that name here. The general has ears everywhere." Mekuriya's heart pounded. He tucked the coin deep into his clothes and hurried away. He now knew what he had to do, show the coin to the king. But getting close to the palace without being noticed by Dawit's guards would be almost impossible. 3 days later, the city prepared for the Feast of Light, an ancient celebration of the gods that watched over Axum's trade and harvest. The streets glowed with torches, music and drums echoed through the night. King Ezana sat on a raised platform, smiling faintly as dancers performed before him. Yet behind the smile, grief burned in his chest. His only son was gone, and whispers of betrayal filled the air. When General Dawit approached to pour wine into the king's cup, the old man's hand shook. "Drink, my king," Dawit said softly. Let your heart be light again. Ezana looked at him, searching his face. Do you still believe the gods see us, Dawit? The general smiled. They see what we show them. The king took a slow sip. The wine was sweet, too sweet. Moments later, his hand dropped the cup. His body went rigid. The crowd gasped as the king collapsed. Poisoned, someone shouted. Chaos broke out. Dawit's men rushed forward, pretending to protect the throne, but in truth they were clearing the way for their master's next move. In the confusion, Mekuriya slipped through the crowd. He saw the king's cup fall, the look of horror on the priests' faces, and the calm smile on Dawit's. He knew now, the same man who killed the prince had now killed the king. He ran to the temple of Maram, the war god, and rang the sacred bell that was only used in times of crisis. The people turned as the bell echoed across the city. General Dawit is a traitor, Mekuriya shouted from the temple steps. He killed the prince and now the king. The guards grabbed him instantly. Lies, Dawit roared. This boy is a slave, a mad one, who would believe him? But before they could drag him away, Mekuriya pulled out the gold coin and held it high. This was found where the prince died. It bears the mark of Arabia, the same land Dawit serves. The crowd murmured. Some of Dawit's own soldiers began to look uneasy. Dawit's eyes flared with rage. Enough. He drew his sword and stepped toward Mekuriya. But before he could strike, a strong hand caught his arm. It was General Tesfaye, commander of the guards. I have long suspected you, Dawit, Tesfaye said coldly. Now the gods have spoken through this boy. The city erupted into battle that night. Dawit's men fought fiercely, but the people of Axum rose against them. Flames licked the palace walls, swords clashed in the courtyards. Mekuriya hid behind a pillar, clutching the coin, praying to the gods he barely believed in. When the fighting ended, dawn was breaking. General Dawit was dragged before the temple steps, his hands bound. His fine robes were torn, his face streaked with blood. Tesfaye stood over him. You betrayed your king, you traded your soul for gold. Dawit spat on the ground. Gold feeds a kingdom more than prayers do. Not when the kingdom's heart is dead, Tesfaye said. They hung Dawit at the gates of Axum that morning, a warning to all who would sell their land for power. King Ezana's body was laid beside his son's at the base of the great obelisk. The priests chanted, the air thick with incense. Mekuriya stood far back, eyes full of tears. He had saved the kingdom, but he was still just a slave. Then Tesfaye approached him. Kneel, he said. Mekuriya knelt, expecting punishment, but instead the general placed a small chain around his neck. From this day you are free, Tesfaye said. Axum remembers those who serve truth. Mekuriya bowed deeply. Thank you, my lord. Tesfaye smiled faintly. Do not thank me, thank the gods or whatever power moved your heart. Weeks passed, the wounds of the kingdom began to heal. But something strange began to happen. One morning, a group of travelers arrived from the north, men who spoke of a new faith, of one God and a man called Christ who had died and risen again. Among them was a humble preacher who carried a wooden cross around his neck. When he entered the city, he stopped before the great obelisk, the same one where Prince Caleb had died, and gasped. Who carved this? He asked, pointing at the faint mark of a cross still etched in the stone. No one knew. Some said it had been there for years. Others whispered it appeared the night the prince died. The preacher smiled softly. Then this city was chosen long ago. He began to speak to the people about forgiveness, peace and faith. Many laughed, some listened, but Mekuriya listened with his whole heart. He felt something stir inside him, something the gods of old Axum had never given him. Hope. Months later, Layla returned from Arabia, unaware that Dawit was dead. She carried new gold and gifts meant to secure the old trade deals. When she reached the port, the guards seized her. The man you served is gone, they told her. His plot failed. She tried to speak, but the sight of Dawit's body, still hanging near the gates, silenced her. She dropped her coins into the dust. Power never lasts, she whispered. Then she turned her ship toward the sea. Axum crowned a new ruler, Ezana the Younger, nephew of the late king. He was young but wise, raised among priests who valued peace over conquest. Under his reign, the kingdom began to trade not just in gold and spices, but in ideas, faith, language, and learning. And one day, years later, Ezana would make a decision that would change Africa forever. He declared Christianity the faith of Axum, long before most of Europe would accept it. He ordered coins to be minted with the sign of the cross, to replace the old gods. And when the people saw the symbol, they remembered the first cross ever carved in their land, the one beside the body of Prince Caleb. By then, Mekuriya was no longer a boy. He had grown into a quiet man, respected in the king's court. He could read and write, skills rare in those days, and he wrote down the story of the kingdom, of the betrayal, the deaths, and the faith that followed. When King Ezana asked him once, "Why do you write, Mekuriya?" he replied, "So that we do not forget how light came from blood, and truth from death." The king nodded, "Then you serve the gods better than any warrior." Years passed, the obelisk still stood, tall, silent, unbroken. Travelers came from far lands to see it, to marvel at the stones carved with stories of kings and gods. But few noticed the small mark of the cross at its base, faded now, almost invisible. Mekuriya did. Every time he passed it, he touched the stone lightly and whispered, "Forgive us." And sometimes, when the wind blew from the Red Sea, it sounded like a whisper in return. The kingdom of Axum grew strong. Its ships ruled the seas, its traders reached India, and its faith spread across the Horn of Africa. People from distant lands came to learn its wisdom. They spoke of the city that built stone towers reaching the sky, and of a cross that marked its heart. And though kings would rise and fall, and empires would crumble, the story of that night, when a slave dared to speak against power, was told for generations. They said the gods of Axum had watched, but it was the God of truth who had spoken. Centuries later, when explorers came to the land once called Axum, they found the obelisks still standing, silent witnesses to an age of kings, betrayal, and faith. No one remembered Mekuriya's face, or the coin that started it all. But if you looked closely at the base of the tallest obelisk, beneath the dust of 1,000 years, you could still see a faint carving. A cross. Power and betrayal, Dawit's greed and the fall of loyalty. Faith and transformation, from old gods to Christianity. Global connection, Arabia, India, and Axum's trade influence. The voice of the powerless, Mekuriya's courage against the mighty. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing videos.